Hi and welcome back to another episode of Burbex, Brin's Urban Exploration. Today we're going to be exploring a huge Muslim cemetery here in Changchun, China. Before we go on, be sure to hit like and subscribe and check out this great playlist, Cemeteries of the World. Let's go! Today we're here at the Hui Minority Cemetery here in Changchun to take a look around and fill you in on what you can find in a Muslim cemetery in China. Hui minority Muslims, they actually belong to the Sunni group of Muslims. The traditions of the Hui group actually differ quite a lot from Middle Eastern Muslims. In the Middle East, it's very unusual that people would visit a graveyard to pay respects to their ancestors. Cemeteries aren't actually that common here in China. The majority of Chinese people, they would choose cremation rather than burial. However, for the Hui minority, burial is an essential part of their faith. As the customs of the Hui minority have overlapped with the customs of the majority of Han Chinese, paying respects to your ancestors has become much more commonplace. A big difference is that in Saudi Arabia, for example, women are forbidden from going to graveyards. Men worry that the women are going to wail and cry for the dead. It's quite commonplace that you will see women in graveyards here. It's just part of what they do. Another big difference is the way that Hui people will follow the laws of Islam, which is called Sharia. In the Middle East, Sharia law is much more concrete, much hardened, more formal, and everybody listens to what the clerics have to say. They follow that very strictly. For the Hui people in China, their clerics are called Hong. Those are the Hui clerics. Hong. If there are questions about Sharia, the Muslim law, people will go to the Hong and they'll try to decide that. And there's kind of a greater flexibility about that. Traditionally in the Muslim faith, there wouldn't actually be a name marker put on a grave. That's very different here. Here they will often have the Chinese name and the Arabic name put on the gravestone together. Like I mentioned about the graves being elevated, that's one of the differences here as well. It seems that in this graveyard there are 3 different levels of graves, and these can be adjusted over time. The first one is just when there's the burial mound itself, which is like a triangular mound of earth. The second seems to be where they've actually had the headstone installed at the head of the grave. The last is when they've actually redug the grave, raised it up using bricks, elevated it, and then surrounded it with marble. This is something you can do over time, that you can do over the years. And actually you can see some of the materials in the background. These are ready for when people want to raise their graves, you know, raise the profile of these graves. This is definitely not the place to come if you don't like spiders. There are spiders and spider webs everywhere. I think that's partly connected to the fact that this cemetery, this graveyard, has been just left to grow over. It's all overgrown, it's very lush here. Lots of the graves have plants, beautiful plants and trees growing out of them. It's very natural here. That's one of the reasons that I like coming here, because it's so quiet. It's like a little oasis of peace and calm within the city, and I really appreciate that. That's what drew me to this place to begin with. Actually, I saw this place as I was coming past on the bullet train. As I've said before, a lot of the places I find them because I can see them from the bullet train. You can see just over there, that's the bullet train tracks. So the bullet train is my new best friend for finding new spots. It's actually very pleasant here. It's very quiet. Wang Jia Mo Di, which is basically the Wang family's grave. So this would be where all the members of this family are buried. Here's a double plot here. You can see on the left it says Zuye, which means great-grandfather. And on the right it says Wai Zu Mu, which means the great-grandmother on the mother's side. That's right. So you can see that this is a fairly new looking plot. The soil has been packed into these prism shapes like this. Oh wow, this little path down here is really beautiful. This is really beautiful. Some very typical names of people from the Hui minority are Ma and Mu, because that sounds like Muhammad or Mohammed. You can see this is Ma, which means horse. This is a very common name for people in the Hui minority because that sound represents Muhammad. We've got Ma meaning horse. There might be other meanings as well. For example, another common one is Ma, which is for sesame seeds or sesame. Also marijuana, da ma. Traditionally, the headstone of a Muslim grave points towards Mecca, and the head of the corpse should be lined up so that their head is facing towards Mecca. So if we look around this cemetery, we can see that all the tombstones are lined up, and we can assume that they're facing towards Mecca. So this guy was just telling me that he uses this to carry the tombstones. 一个那个应该多少斤呢？
这个
啊，
得有150斤吧。
150斤，75公斤。75公斤，对。哦，谢谢哈。
没事。
If we look at this grave is actually quite a bit different from what it would be like in the Middle East. In the Middle East, they think that the grave should only be raised up a little bit. They talk about a hand span, maybe the width of a hand. But in the Hui minority, what they do is they raise it up much higher and they surround it with bricks. So it's actually raised up probably 4 or 5 feet. There are some interesting mottos which are written around here. There's 2 little stones here. This one says Shoubi Nanshan, which is something that you say to old people. Shoubi Nanshan, it means I hope you live as old as South Mountain. A huge whale. Oh. Spiders. He uses this to tombstones. A gravestone as well. On the reverse side of the tombstone, which faces away from Mecca, kind of in the direction that the body is facing, you can find a lot of messages as well. A lot of these little slogans and proverbs. For example, this one says, Fu Ai Rushan, a father's love is like a mountain. Basically, a father's love lasts forever. This one here says 永远怀念, which means forever remembrance, or basically we will remember you forever. Up ahead we can actually see some of the grave diggers at work right now. He uses this to carry the tombstones. 一个那个应该多少斤呢？
这个得有150斤吧。
150斤。哦，谢谢哈。
没事。
They're not actually digging a grave, they're actually renovating a grave. So they're elevating it, and they're probably going to add gravestone as well. They've got the tent up because they're putting cement around the bricks, which is supporting the grave. So you can see they've put in the gravestones at the back. There's the larger gravestone on the right and the smaller one on the left. Now they're just cementing the gravestones in place. This is a grave renovation. You can see they've planted some pine trees around it. I asked them earlier how long it takes, and they say it takes about 2 days to renovate a grave like this. We're just coming up to the main gate, and I'm going to get out of here now. There's a reason I didn't want to show you the main gate to begin with, because I didn't want you to get the wrong idea about this place. The main entrance of this place has more of the feeling of a Chinese temple to it, and it's a lot more elaborate and ostentatious than a lot of other Muslim cemeteries would be. In general, Muslims think that burials should be much less ostentatious, a simple burial, a simple gravestone, and that it's better to spend money on the poor and the needy rather than to go out and buy a big glamorous tombstone or anything. So I think this is a little bit over the top, but again, you can see how the minority Han culture and the minority Hui culture have crossed over here. It's starting to rain now, so that means it's time for me to get out of here. If you liked the video, don't forget to hit like, make sure you subscribe, and stay tuned for more videos from Burbex, Brin's Urban Exploration, every week. Let's go!